Little Rock Nine were a group of 9 African American students who were the first to integrate Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas in 1957. Their names are 1. Ernest Green, 2. Elizabeth Eckford, 3. Minna Jean Brown, 4. Terrence Roberts, 5. Jefferson Thomas, 6. Melba Patillo Beals, 7. Thelma Mothershed, 8. Gloria Ray Callmark, 9. Carlotta Walls Lanier. These students played a crucial role in the struggle for civil rights and the desegregation of public schools in the United States. The student who arrived by herself was Elizabeth Eckford. On September 4, 1957, she attempted to integrate Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas, but was met with hostility and aggression from the crowd. Unlike the other 8 students, Elizabeth did not arrive with a group. She faced a very challenging and intimidating situation alone that day. Elizabeth Eckford arrived by herself because she did not receive the message about the specific meeting time and place that the other 8 students did. On that day, September 4, 1957, the Little Rock Nine had planned to meet up and enter the school together. But due to a miscommunication, Elizabeth Eckford did not have a phone, which contributed to the miscommunication. Elizabeth did not get the information in time. As a result, she went to the school on her own and faced the angry mob of protesters by herself. This situation was a turning point in the civil rights movement. This lack of communication and the challenges it created on that historic day underscored the obstacles faced by those who were at the forefront of the civil rights movement. When Elizabeth Eckford arrived at Central High School by herself, the other 8 students were waiting at a different location. They had planned to meet up before heading to the school together. However, due to the miscommunication, Elizabeth did not receive the message about the meeting time and location. As a result, she went to the school on her own, while the other 8 students were still at the designated meeting spot. This situation led to Elizabeth facing the hostile crowd by herself. The iconic photos of Elizabeth Eckford facing the angry crowd were taken by several photographers on September 4, 1957. One of the most famous images was captured by a photographer named Will Counts, who worked for the Arkansas Democrat. These powerful photographs documented the hostility and courage of Elizabeth as she attempted to integrate the school. The images were taken on that day and quickly became symbols of the struggle for civil rights and the fight against segregation. The photographs of the other 8 students arriving at Central High School were also taken by journalists and photographers on the same day, September 4, 1957. Notably, these images were captured by photographers from various news outlets covering the event. While the photographs of Elizabeth Eckford are the most famous, there were also images of the other 8 students as they faced the challenges of integrating the school. When the other 8 students' photos were taken, they had already entered the school. After Elizabeth Eckford faced the hostile crowd alone, the other 8 students entered the school through a different entrance. Once inside, they were photographed by journalists and reporters who were documenting the historic event of desegregation at Central High School. These images captured their arrival and the atmosphere of that significant day. On September 4, 1957, when Elizabeth Eckford and the other students tried to enter Central High School, they faced significant resistance. The governor of Arkansas at the time, Orville Faubus, had called in the Arkansas National Guard to prevent the students from entering the school, claiming it was to maintain order and prevent violence. This action effectively blocked the Little Rock Nine from entering the school on that day. It wasn't until later, with the intervention of federal troops and a court order, that the students were able to enter the school and begin the process of desegregation. The president who ordered the federal troops to protect the Little Rock Nine was President Dwight D. Eisenhower. In response to the resistance and the efforts to prevent the integration of Central High School, President Eisenhower sent the 101st Airborne Division to Little Rock to ensure the safety of the 9 students and enforce the court's desegregation order. This action helped to uphold the rule of law and support the civil rights of the students. When Elizabeth Eckford was unable to enter Central High School due to the mob blocking her way, she walked to a bus stop and waited quietly, trying to hold her composure. During that time, the crowd continued to harass her. People shouted cruel things, and one person even suggested hanging her. A terrifying symbol, a noose with a doll, was displayed, adding to the hostility she faced. Despite the overwhelming aggression, Elizabeth showed remarkable strength by remaining calm until she could safely leave on the bus. Her courage in that moment became a powerful symbol of resilience in the civil rights movement. Elizabeth Eckford waited for what must have felt like an eternity, but in reality, it was about 20 minutes. During that time, she endured relentless verbal abuse, racial slurs, and threats from the angry mob. People spat at her, shouted hateful words, and tried to intimidate her in terrifying ways. Despite all this, she sat quietly, showing incredible strength and dignity. Her ability to remain calm under such extreme pressure is one of the most powerful moments in the history of the civil rights movement. The Arkansas National Guard, which had been deployed by Governor Orval Faubus under the claim of maintaining order, was not there to protect Elizabeth Eckford or the other black students. Instead, they were actively preventing the Little Rock Nine from entering the school. Rather than intervening to protect Elizabeth from the mob's abuse, the guards followed the governor's orders to block the students from entering the building. While Elizabeth sat at the bus stop facing relentless harassment, the National Guard stood by and did nothing to stop the crowd. Their presence reinforced the hostility as they symbolized state-sanctioned resistance to integration. It wasn't until federal intervention weeks later that President Eisenhower sent the 101st Airborne Division to protect the students and enforce the court's desegregation order. On that first day, September 4th, 1957, none of the Little Rock Nine successfully attended class. While the other 8 students attempted to enter Central High School as planned, they were turned away at the entrance by the Arkansas National Guard. Just like Elizabeth Eckford, Governor Orval Faubus had instructed the Guard to block all 9 students, claiming it was for their protection. But in reality, it was to prevent integration. It wasn't until September 25th, after President Eisenhower federalized the Arkansas National Guard and sent the 101st Airborne Division to enforce desegregation, that the Little Rock Nine were finally able to enter the school and attend classes. Even then, they faced constant harassment and intimidation throughout the school year. It actually took about 3 weeks before the Little Rock Nine were able to successfully enter Central High School. After the chaotic events on September 4th, 1957, the students stayed home for their safety while legal battles and public tension escalated. During this time, Governor Faubus continued to resist integration. On September 20th, a federal judge ordered Faubus to remove the National Guard. With the guards gone, the Little Rock Nine tried to enter the school again on September 23rd. This time, they made it inside through a side entrance, but once the mob outside realized they were in the building, violence erupted. The students were rushed out for their safety. Finally, on September 25th, under the protection of federal troops sent by President Eisenhower, the Little Rock Nine were able to enter the school safely and begin attending classes. Even then, they faced constant harassment throughout the school year. The Little Rock Nine's successful entry into Central High School on September 25th, 1957 was indeed their third attempt. The first attempt was on September 4th, when Elizabeth Eckford faced the mob alone, and the other 8 students were turned away by the Arkansas National Guard. The second attempt was on September 23rd, when the students managed to enter the school through a side entrance. However, once the violent mob outside realized they were inside, the situation became so dangerous that the students had to be escorted out for their safety. The third attempt on September 25th happened under the protection of federal troops ordered by President Eisenhower. This time, the 101st Airborne Division and federalized National Guard troops ensured the students could safely enter the school and begin attending classes. Even then, the Little Rock Nine endured constant harassment throughout the year, but their perseverance marked a significant victory in the fight for desegregation. On September 23rd, 1957, when the Little Rock Nine had to leave the school after the mob outside turned violent, the situation became dangerous for more than just the students. The Little Rock Nine themselves were quickly escorted out by school officials and safely taken away before they could be physically harmed. However, some reporters and photographers who were covering the event were attacked by the angry mob. Journalists were punched, kicked, and had their cameras smashed as the crowd's anger escalated. One notable victim was a black journalist named Alex Wilson, who was brutally beaten and struck in the head with a brick while trying to report on the events. Despite the violence, Wilson famously refused to run, walking away with dignity even as he was attacked. The violence that day underscored just how dangerous the situation had become, which ultimately led President Eisenhower to send federal troops to restore order and protect the students. Elizabeth Eckford went on to live a life marked by resilience and quiet strength. After her experiences as one of the Little Rock Nine, she faced lasting emotional scars from the trauma she endured. She attended Knox College in Illinois and later earned a history degree from Central State University in Ohio. Elizabeth worked in various roles throughout her life, including as a probation officer for over 20 years in Little Rock. She also served in the military and later became a speaker, sharing her powerful story to educate others about racial injustice and her experiences during the civil rights movement. Though she has generally maintained a private life, Elizabeth never married and does not have children. She has remained committed to promoting understanding and healing, particularly in Little Rock, where she continues to be a significant figure in the community. Her courage and dignity have left a lasting impact on history.
Didn't know about any plan to arrive at the school accompanied by 4 ministers. I got off the bus 2 blocks from school and I could hear the murmur of a crowd. I was not afraid because I knew that the Arkansas National Guard was there. They closed ranks when I approached. I thought, well, maybe I'm not supposed to enter here. So I walked down further where there was another sidewalk leading to the school. This time the soldiers crossed rifles to bar me. I still did not understand that they were there to keep me out. So I made a third attempt, and when I made a third attempt, the soldier directed me across the street where there were angry demonstrators shouting. As I stepped out into the street, they surged in and were behind me. They said a lot of angry, hurtful things. I had heard people saying, "Get a rope, let's hang her from a tree." I knew that there was another bus stop at the end of the street.
Elizabeth Eckford was indeed the only member of the Little Rock Nine who remained in Little Rock, Arkansas after the integration crisis. The other 8 members moved away to pursue education and careers in different parts of the country. Despite the challenges she faced, Elizabeth chose to stay in her hometown and became an important voice in sharing the history of that pivotal moment in civil rights history.
That on 23rd, we had been gathered at the base house, and we went by cars in groups to Central, and we got in a door at the far end, well away from the crowd.
Right.
Crowd was down at the 14th Street end. We went in 16th Street end. But when we were gathered to go to school after we had been taken out, and we were there with the military, we went in a military convoy. I remember we were in I remember at one point, I don't know if it was the first day or another day, one point we were in a military van that was, that olive green, and there was gun-mounted jeeps fore and aft. And I remember the soldiers walking us up those steps, and there were students who were kind of like in a barricade, and soldiers went right. What we experienced was desegregation. We were never considered and treated like equal. They were taunting me, shouting racial slurs. I'd seen them break ranks to admit white students. When I approached them, they closed ranks to bar me. And I heard someone say, "Let's hang her. Get a rope, drag her over to the tree." I saw a woman who appeared to have a kind face, so I turned toward her, and she spat on me. It's been a difficult journey for me, but worthwhile, because it is a chance to teach. I had heard people saying, "Get a rope, let's hang her from a tree." I got off the bus 2 blocks from school, and I could hear the murmur of a crowd.
Arkansas Governor Orval Faubus opposed the integration and mobilized the Arkansas National Guard to prevent the students from entering the school. President Dwight D. Eisenhower intervened, federalizing the National Guard and deploying the 101st Airborne Division to ensure the students' safety and uphold the Supreme Court's ruling. Despite facing harassment, jeers, and threats from white students and protesters, the Little Rock Nine persevered and attended Central High School. The following year, Little Rock's high schools were closed to prevent further desegregation, but the students and the NAACP continued to fight for integration. 40 years after the Little Rock 9 integrated Central High School in 1957, the event was commemorated and reflected upon, with many focusing on the ongoing struggle for equality and the impact of the desegregation efforts, according to the National Archives. The Little Rock Nine's efforts and the events surrounding their integration into Central High School became a pivotal moment in the civil rights movement, highlighting the struggle for racial equality and the clash between federal and state power.
Racism, particularly in America's history, is rooted in centuries of social, economic, and political systems designed to uphold white supremacy. From slavery to segregation, these structures created a false narrative that associated whiteness with power, privilege, and superiority, while dehumanizing and marginalizing people of color. This mindset became ingrained in society, passed down through generations, and reinforced by institutions like education, media, and politics. The fear and hostility that fueled moments like what Elizabeth Eckford faced often stemmed from a perceived threat, not just to social norms, but to power and identity. Desegregation challenged long-held beliefs and forced some white Americans to confront ideas they had been conditioned to accept. It's important to remember that while racism was, and in some ways still is, deeply embedded in parts of society, there have always been people, both black and white, who have worked courageously to challenge those injustices and build a more inclusive and just country. Understanding this history helps explain the pain, but it also highlights the resilience and strength of those who have fought for equality. In 1997, on the 40th anniversary of the Little Rock Nine's integration of Central High School, the individuals involved in that historic moment came together for a reunion. The photograph is likely the one showing Elizabeth Eckford, one of the Little Rock Nine, and a white student, Hazel Bryan, later known as Hazel Massery, who was yelling at her. In 1997, during the anniversary event, Hazel Bryan Massery publicly apologized to Elizabeth Eckford for her behavior at that time. This moment was significant in acknowledging the past and moving towards reconciliation. In 1999, President Bill Clinton awarded the Congressional Gold Medal to the Little Rock Nine for their bravery and contributions to the civil rights movement. This medal is one of the highest civilian honors in the United States. The Little Rock Nine were a group of 9 African American students who, in 1957, were the first black students to attend Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas. After the Supreme Court's decision in Brown versus Board of Education that declared segregation in public schools unconstitutional, their courageous actions were pivotal in the fight for civil rights and helped to pave the way for greater equality in education.
Before leaving the channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe bell and hit the like bell. It helps the channel grow. Thank you.